Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this special edition once again, live on iAfrica TV. We are happy to be back. We are back today. Of course, we are not talking about the coronavirus this afternoon as of now, but we are talking about constitution matters because the Constitutional Review Commission on Monday submitted the draft constitution to the President at the State House in Banjul. And today, the 31st of March 2020, the Commission is about to launch the constitution or the draft constitution online so that Gambians can access the details information that has been finally drafted and handed over to the executive for further consideration. So of course, joining me on this platform to discuss about that as we wait for the commencement of that launching at the Commission's headquarters is my colleague or senior, of course, editor and correspondent Ibrahim. Ibrahim, good afternoon and welcome to this special edition.
Thank you very much, Amadou. Like you said, this is a very important exercise. As we know, the Constitutional Review Commission has been very busy, especially towards the end of 2019, as regards to building up a constitution that will be deciding as how Gambians are governed for the rest of their lives, hopefully. And, you know, the first part has been given to the President. Actually, the draft is given. It is supposed to be the final one. And this is a stage through, you know, the constitutional process recognized that after the drafting of the constitution, so it needs to go to the President first, that is the cabinet, from after which it will also be forwarded to the National Assembly for consideration, then referendum where Gambians will vote for yes or no about the new constitution. So it is a very important exercise, and I know the press conference will give more detail as to what is to be done tonight about this new
absolutely. Very well, sir. Well, by the way, the draft constitution is handed to the executive at a time when coronavirus is rocking the world in a very greater impact, of course, negatively, I have to say. But it's good to remind you that the commission, of course, after it was launched, it was tasked to review the 1997 Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia and also write a new constitution, of course, and prepare a report with regards to the new constitution. And of course, so this is why after a period of 18 months and series of extensions, finally the draft has been finalized and been handed to the executive. So of course, like you said, we are going to hear, of course, more details as from the Commission's chairman and some of the commissioners when the press conference begin, which we, of course, you know, which will start any moment from now. Those are the scenes that's the chairman already seated. Well, it's a lot of a period of 18 months and you know, and a couple of months. You know, 1 year, of course, and a couple of months. So. A lot of work done by the commission, and there has been different reaction from cross sections of Gambians on the draft constitution, which was earlier on published or released by the commission, prior to maybe adding on some comments here and there, and then you know, formally handing over the draft to the president yesterday.
Yeah, indeed, a lot of work, and this was a record of the Constitutional Review Commission, because already Gambians are united as to the, you know, the graduation from the 1997 Constitution, even though until this day, you know, that is the Constitution that is governing the country. You remember 2 days ago, the President of the Republic, Adama Barrow, invoked constitutional powers vested in him by the 1997 Constitution. Absolutely. So it is the Constitution that Gambians are looking to graduate from, and you know, this is already unanimous. So Gambians felt that part of the Constitution has a lot of draconian provisions, you know, that empower the security sector, that empower them to such that they can, you know, implement extrajudicial obligations, so which we think that are not in line with modern day, you know, way of governance. So this is the good thing about, you know, the new constitution, that it is supposed to correct all the ills that are being brought in thanks to the colonial rules, for example, that were brought into the country during the during the colonial time. The European brought in laws, and then the first regime, second regime maintained them. So you just link us back to the press conference.
Thank you very much. We are going to cross over to the Commission's headquarters as the process of the launching have already started.
Start Yes, thank you all very much.
We would come back to that in a while. Of course, some issues there, but yeah, we are about to witness of course, the press conference. This time, of course, the Commission doing it in a very different way, to previous editions because of the coronavirus. This one is on online, of course. Another unique way of doing things because of the coronavirus, I can say.
Yeah, like you introduced earlier, we would have loved to not talk about the coronavirus today, but in fact, the press conference is taking place online. The CRC is conducting this press conference online, and the Paradise TV, and in collaboration with iAfrica is broadcasting it. So whoever want to ask a questions will have to show through the CRC online platform. So journalists are not allowed to gather there today. Yeah. So this is due to the coronavirus. As we know, Gambia, we register our 4th case, so we are still battling. The country is still battling as to how to control it, how to maintain the trend that it is not spreading further. Yeah. So the CRC has no better option than to call on journalists to communicate with them as to what is happening this morning or this afternoon online.
Yeah, technology seems to be helping in very efficient ways and easy ways to help people do their bit. Despite we are facing confronted with this deadly virus called coronavirus. Now, before we get back to the Commission headquarters and follow the proceedings down there, of course, again coming back to the reaction of Gambians. Age limit has been an issue. Some youths has raised concern on that, and of course, the issue of, or the most hated issue or debate was the issue of secularism. I know Gambians would be looking forward to that, whether it is in the draft or not. So, what's your view on that?
Yeah, the new constitution, or the final draft of the new constitution will have to, subside the debate, because during the consultations, Gambians came all out to, argue as to what they want to see in the constitution, what kind of constitution they want to govern them. Yeah. So others were worried about the qualification for one to become a president or representative in all aspects of political positions, including National Assembly, local government. So these were heated debates. And religious matters, of course, also sort of like the secular or not secular. As we know, Gambia is, a religious country, with my majority being Muslims, minority Christian, and less than 1% is the others who, varies from one year. Yeah. So the new constitution, the draft now, so whoever is not in agreement on this draft, what will happen is now to prove it on referendum. That is supposed to be the case. But we are not anticipating a situation where people will go back to consultation again and then edit into before referendum. So now, that is very unlikely.
Talking about the referendum, you take us through the process. Consultations has been done over nearly to 2 years now. The work done by the Commission, Gambians home and abroad have given in their inputs. Now, after the first initial draft, Gambians were given the chance again to give their opinion on regards to what they think should be added or removed from the Constitution. Now, the final draft is collated and given to the President. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, this is a very important case, and it shows that Gambians were okay. The press conference,
I need to, we need to cross over back to the Commission and follow the proceedings.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the media, good afternoon. I have a statement to deliver, but before I do that, I would want to reflect briefly on the current emergency situation that we find ourselves in, along with practically every country around the world. And that has to do with the COVID-19, or the corona virus pandemic that we all are concerned about. It's about humanity and the well-being of humanity, and it's a matter that concerns every individual. For us, it is regretful that we have to have this ceremony, if I can call it that, to finalize our work and to deliver to the public the draft constitution and the accompanying report. We do certainly recognize the sensitivities around this particular subject matter, and our prayers are with those that are affected, the families, and we certainly continue to pray for the well-being of our people, for humanity in general. We at the CRC have been trying to do our very utmost to distance ourselves from each other as required under the emergency regulations in order to protect each other and to protect the general public. And we continue to do the best we can to sensitize the public in this particular regard as well. But nonetheless, as a country, we do need to move on. We do need to continue working. The government has to encourage that. We just need to be cautious in terms of our interactions with each other. So whilst we are at it, we all should continue to pray for the well-being of humanity and for the Almighty God, who has power over all things and all living beings, to safeguard and protect all of us from further ravages of this international, of this pandemic, which is causing or wreaking so much havoc around the globe. Having said that, I would at this juncture want to, on behalf of my colleague commissioners and the staff of the CRC Secretariat, to indicate how proudly I am honored and gratified to welcome all of you to yet another historic dialogue with the Constitutional Review Commission. Today's dialogue takes a different format because it is going to be done online and should be very interactive, as most of you will be joining us through Skype, WhatsApp, Zoom, and by sending text messages to the numbers that have already been shared with you. This online media dialogue is necessitated, as I indicated earlier, by the outbreak of the contagious global pandemic of COVID-19, which has made all public gatherings virtually impossible. Besides, we need to also comply with the restrictions in the emergency regulations promulgated by the government to curb the spread of this virus in the Gambia. Truly, from the onset, we have had many interactions during which we updated you, members of the media, on issues pertaining to the CRC assignment of developing and delivering a new constitution for our country. We cherish and highly appreciate the mutual cordiality and partnership we have had since the establishment of the Commission in June 2018. You have played your part professionally within the spirit of our mutual partnership by imparting relevant information to the public in general. We are extremely grateful and satisfied with the partnership which has enabled all of us to get to deliver a new constitution for the Republic of the Gambia. So I want to be very emphatic on this point because it is important that as the CRC, we recognize that the journey we have been on is one we've embarked on with so many other people. And the media in particular has been with us from day one, right up to this moment, and I'm sure they will continue to be with us and to be with the new draft constitution going forward. So I take this opportunity on behalf of my colleague commissioners to thank each and every member of the media, both at home here as well as abroad, who have been partnering with us in this endeavor. The purpose of this CRC online press conference today is to inform the Gambian public through the media that the CRC has finalized the draft constitution and submitted it to His Excellency the President of the Republic yesterday, Monday, 30th of March 2020, as required by the CRC Act of 2017. Meanwhile, the Commission will continue to be in place until 1 month as stipulated in the CRC Act after the date of enactment by the National Assembly of the bill introducing the Constitution. We are also required to attend the National Assembly if needed to clarify any matter and or answer any questions the honorable ministers, also the honorable members of the National Assembly may seek of us. We remain ready to fulfill our statutory obligations as required. As regards the methodology adopted by the CRC to arrive at its decisions that inform the drafting of the new Constitution, I will quote extensively with necessary modifications from my statement of yesterday, which I made during the submission of the draft Constitution to His Excellency, the President of the Republic. And I begin that quote. As required in the CRC Act of 2017, the CRC has devised and employed numerous strategies to involve and allow Gambians to actively participate in developing a durable constitution that will take on board their wishes and aspirations. The CRC has, throughout the performance of its functions and exercise of the discretionary powers vested in it under the CRC Act, adhered to the statutorily established functions and exercised its discretionary powers in a fair and balanced manner, bearing in mind at all times matters that it considered to be in the best interest and future of the Gambia. I made sure of this as chairperson. Indeed, from the inception of our work, I made sure that the ground rules were properly established and agreed upon. Our role as commissioners was to facilitate public opinions, play the role of devil's advocate by ensuring the full coverage of all angles to an issue, make an assessment of what was essential or fundamental for inclusion in the draft Constitution, and ensure a properly and effectively drafted Constitution that left little to no room for interpretation or uncertainty. Personal beliefs were eschewed and kept out of the decision-making process. The processes and procedures adopted in developing the draft Constitution are articulated in detail in the report that was submitted to His Excellency the President along with the draft Constitution. Suffice it to say, however, that the CRC approach from the inception of its work had been to utilize all available practical platforms to afford Gambians and other stakeholders the opportunity to participate in the Constitution building process. The platforms included face-to-face public consultations, focus group discussions, written submissions on the issues document, online surveys, household surveys, face-to-face discussions with other stakeholders, including the 3 organs of state, relevant government ministries, departments and agencies, civil society groups, faith-based organizations, specific interest groups, associations, and individuals, and a review of media debates, including social media. In essence, these consultation platforms represented the first of their type and magnitude in constitutional development in the history of the Gambia, and provided unprecedented opportunities for citizens and other stakeholders to directly participate in the building of their new constitution to replace the 1997 Constitution. While ultimately the CRC Act empowered the CRC to exercise its judgment on what it considered appropriate, the CRC gave enormous credence to public opinion, recognizing that constitution building must be centered on the people to be governed by the Constitution to give it the legitimacy to stand out as a credible and generally accepted instrument. Hence the CRC's motto of transparency, inclusiveness, representation, participation, and ownership. Our own direct interface with the Gambian people, both at home and abroad, and other stakeholders, has been an eye-opener to the circumstances and needs of the people in our context in its broadest perspective. We are enormously grateful to our citizens for the active interest they had developed in the constitutional review process from the commencement of our assignment, and perhaps even more importantly, for the ideas they contributed to the development of their new constitution. We, the commissioners, drew inspiration from them, and without the ideas they so graciously shared with us, and sometimes with emotion and strong passion, the draft constitution would not have been of the quality we believe it is. non-citizens, and other stakeholders within and outside the country who contributed ideas to the CRC had equally made a huge positive difference to the work of the CRC. Constitution building is a serious business, but it is also a Herculean task, especially when the drafters of the new constitution are confronted with tons of wishes and aspirations for inclusion in that constitution. When we were tasked to review the 1997 Constitution, His Excellency the President was emphatic about the need to develop a constitution that will serve the test of time. This, therefore, required us to take a serious look at key constitutional issues relative to the present and future generations. In other words, what is best for this country today and going into the future, so that both the present and future generations are governed by the same rules, and such that an amendment of the Constitution will only be necessitated by the most exceptional of circumstances. To achieve this within a period of 18 months was not easy and required many long days and nights to get us to this day. We remain forever grateful to the Almighty God for giving us both the strength and the commitment to achieve this for our country and as our leaders expected of us. When the CRC published the first draft of the proposed constitution in November of 2019, it had three objectives. The first was to give Gambians and other stakeholders the opportunity to determine whether the wishes and aspirations they expressed to the CRC during the first round of public consultations had been properly addressed, and where any of those had been omitted, for the CRC to explain its reasons for the omission, exercising the authority vested in it under the CRC Act. The second was to afford further dialogue on matters that could be clarified better and ensure a better draft constitution. The third was to invite opinions on new important elements that the draft constitution could usefully provide. We achieved all three objectives and exercised proper discretion in that regard. The participants in the second round of public consultations were actively engaged with the CRC, and our process of constitutional development was further enriched. End of my quote of yesterday. In terms of what's new in the draft constitution, the draft constitution contains 319 sections divided into 20 chapters and several parts. In the assessment of the CRC, the draft constitution represents the generality of the wishes and aspirations of the Gambian people. Each chapter addresses a different issue, although in some instances certain chapters have a correlation with provisions contained in other chapters. In order to ensure clarity and prevent inconsistencies, appropriate sectional and cross-references are made. The draft constitution that we are publishing today is an embodiment of the hopes and aspirations of the people of the Gambia. I will cite a few examples of the new elements contained in the draft constitution since the publication of the consultation draft in November of 2019 and the receipt of opinions thereafter. Chapter 1, which comprises 6 sections, recognizes that the Gambia is a sovereign republic and a multi-party democratic state. A new provision has been added to declare that the Gambia comprises people of different faiths, and each faith is to be respected and treated fairly without any discrimination. In essence, Section 1 of the draft constitution retains Section 1 of both the 1970 and 1997 constitution by simply declaring the Gambia as a sovereign republic. It also retains Section 100, subsection 2B of the 1997 Constitution, which prohibits the National Assembly, amongst other things, from enacting any law establishing any religion in the Gambia as a state religion. Furthermore, Section 12 of the draft Constitution declares that culture and respect for ethnic and religious diversity is the foundation of our nation and the cumulative effect of the Gambian people and the nation. Accordingly, the provision, amongst other things, obligates the state to recognize and protect ethnic and religious diversity of the Gambia, in which all faiths are treated fairly, to ensure peaceful coexistence between all ethnic and religious groups. Section 49 under Chapter 6 of the draft Constitution guarantees freedom of conscience, religion, thought, belief, and opinion. It has been modified to ensure that an individual's manifestation or practice of his or her religion is not subject to interference by the state or any other person or authority. Under Section 88, subsection 5, paragraph B of Chapter 8, provision is made that the president cannot exercise any power, and that is any president, cannot exercise any power to establish any religion as a state religion. We have also inserted a new Section 4 on national symbols comprising the national flag, national anthem, coat of arms, and the public seal. These are considered to be very important symbols that all Gambians should identify with. With respect to the national days, we have identified the specific dates in the draft Constitution to ensure clarity. Chapter 6 of the draft Constitution addresses the protection of fundamental human rights and freedoms, which is a key feature of any democracy. This chapter provides for fundamental human rights and freedoms in sections 31 to 73. On the freedom of expression, the previous provision that effectively removed from protection the uttering of abusive or threatening speech or writing causing feelings of ill will, disaffection, or hostility has been removed. The CRC, upon reflection and carefully considering representations received, formed the view that it was not necessary to curtail the freedom of expression in that regard. In addition, a new provision has been included on the right to fair administrative action. This, amongst other things, declares that a person has the right to be given reasons in writing in respect of any action taken against him or her, irrespective of whether it is in the public service or in the private sector. With respect to the election of president under Chapter 8, the period within which presidential election is to be held before the term of the incumbent president expires has been increased from 3 weeks to 6 weeks. The CRC considered that some element of flexibility was necessary to allow for unanticipated eventualities. The president is given a free hand to nominate and appoint his or her vice president, However, ministerial appointments are subject to National Assembly confirmation, which must be carried out within 14 days after. In order to ensure that the confirmation process is not politicized to frustrate a presidential nominee, Chapter 9 on the legislature has been modified to require confirmations to be made within a prescribed period of 14 days. Where it decides not to confirm a candidate, it is obligated to provide its reasons to the president in writing within 3 days of that decision. Any failure in that regard shall deem a candidate to be approved. Furthermore, the National Assembly is to be guided by certain established principles, which include respecting the qualifications and disqualifications contained in the Constitution, respecting the guiding principles specified in respect of an office for which confirmation is required, exercising good judgment without concentrating on differences of ideology, belief, or political party affiliation, and treating candidates for confirmation with respect. In essence, the role of the National Assembly in any confirmation process is to aid and assist the President without necessarily impeding the President. In Chapter 13 on Public Finance Management, new provision is made prohibiting the imposition of taxation by giving it retroactive effect. Every tax imposed must have a prospective effect, not otherwise. The chapter on the public service has been revised and better streamlined to avoid repeating certain provisions in respect of the various service commissions established under that chapter. In a similar vein, the chapter on national security has been revised slightly to reduce the composition of the National Security Council and remove from membership of the Internal Security Service Commission the heads of the relevant security service institutions. This is designed to ensure transparency and better governance. It is important that the general public reads the entirety of the draft constitution against the proposed consultation draft that was published in 2019 to see the other specific areas where changes have been effected. As I indicated earlier, I was only citing a few examples. The CRC has made further technical amendments of a drafting nature to ensure better internal consistency within the draft. I would once again wish to thank all partners on this journey and join our citizens in hoping for a future that is guided by the wishes and aspirations enshrined in the draft constitution. On that note, I thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the media, and conclude my statement at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Justice Chorno Suleiman Jallo, for that brilliant statement. For those watching us live, we are here at the Constitutional Review Commission for the press conference following the release of the final draft constitution to His Excellency, the President Adama Barrow. Without much ado, my task is simple. I'm going to open the floor. It's the first time it's a virtual press conference, so already some journalists have sent in their questions. I have a couple of them here, so I will start reading some of those questions to Chairman. Chairman is not new to virtual conferences like this. We have done one in Basse during our public consultation for the diaspora community. Mr. Chairman, we have a couple of questions. We have 4 questions from one Momodu S. Juve. He works with Bloomberg News in New York. I will read the first question and then you can give him the answer. His first question is, what are the main changes in the draft constitution compared to the 1997 constitution?
Thank you very much, Mr. Juve. The best answer I can give is one needs to look at the 1997 Constitution, compare it with the draft Constitution, that there you get a comprehensive answer. But I think what I need to indicate is that we have not dispensed entirely with the 1997 Constitution. One has to acknowledge, as we did, that the 1997 Constitution does have good provisions within, and we have adopted those provisions. In some instances, we've modified them. But there are fundamental differences between this Constitution and the 1997 Constitution. And one of them has to do with the new chapters we've introduced in the draft Constitution. We've introduced a new chapter on leadership and governance principles. That is an entirely new chapter, and it has come about as a result of the feedback we received from the public consultations, where emphasis was placed immensely on governance, and we thought that was key, and we developed those principles. And we also have created a new chapter on independent institutions, and we've identified 6 key institutions that we thought are central to the issue of governance and in terms of the administration of this country. That one is also new, and we consider it to be quite fundamental. And the interesting thing is that nobody objected to that particular, those 2 particular, generally nobody objected to those 2 chapters that we have created. We've also created a new chapter, perhaps not entirely new, on land. But I say new in the sense that this is the first comprehensive chapter on land matters that we have created. The 1997 Constitution, if memory serves me well, has only one provision on land in terms of requiring the establishment of the Land Commission. but we have gone further. We've established a comprehensive chapter on land tenure systems in this country. We've identified those being freehold, leasehold, as well as customary tenure. All those have been identified, and we've also sought to protect land vis-a-vis citizens and non-citizens, because we think this is quite critical, particularly coming from the public consultations that we have been engaged in. But in addition to that, we've ensured in the final draft constitution that we will be publishing shortly that we've created appropriate balance to ensure that justice is what really governs the land tenure system in this country in terms of acquisition and use. So in that respect, yes, there are quite a number of other provisions. If I want to go into all the others, I'm sure that's going to take quite a while, but I thought I needed to outline first the fundamentals. The presidential system, I should just point out, is key. It has introduced a two-term limit of 5 years, maximum 10 years, that anybody can serve as president. And for the first time, as I already mentioned, it's introduced a system of confirmation of ministerial appointments, and that also applies to certain key other offices, particularly those relating to independent offices. But like I said, I mean, I can go on, but the reality is when one juxtaposes the 1997 Constitution against the 2020 draft Constitution, you'll see a lot of marked differences.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The second question reads, does the draft Constitution provide for a better balance of power between the executive, legislature, and the judiciary?
In our considered opinion, the answer is yes. I think people should read the provisions. We've tried to ensure that there is appropriate balance based on the separation of powers as well, and to the extent feasible to ensure that each institution plays its rules to the maximum.
Okay. We have another question from one Omar Ba of the Standard newspaper. The question reads, now that the final draft is submitted to the president, what happened next?
Well, our mandate was to draft a new constitution and prepare a report and to submit those to the president, which we did yesterday. Effectively, as far as that subject is concerned, that's where our mandate ends. Thereafter, what remains is a combination of executive and legislative action. From the executive's standpoint, it is for them to now steer the draft constitution forward to the legislature along with a bill containing the draft constitution. And it is then for the legislature to look at the draft constitution and the bill and debate the subject matter. And then we as commissioners could be called, as I mentioned in my statement, to provide explanations or clarifications as may be required of us. So that in essence is what is going to happen, and the Constitutional Review Commission will come to an end 1 month after the bill introducing the Constitution into the National Assembly has been done.
Okay. There is a follow-up question to Omar before we move to the next one. There are reports that President Barrow and his newly registered political party are planning to reject the final Constitution on the grounds that the current draft will strengthen the National Assembly and weaken the Gambian presidency. What is CRC take on this?
The CRC has no take on it. I think we cannot go on speculation. It is not our responsibility. Our responsibility at the CRC is in accordance with the mandate given to us under the CRC Act, and that is what we have responsibility to discharge. Anything outside of that framework really, I think will be inappropriate for us to get into that debate.
Another question is, does the president have the power to adjust the final draft before it goes to the National Assembly?
What we have, like I said, what we are mandated to is draft the Constitution and submit it. What happens thereafter really is not something that the CRC has power over. It goes to the executive. It is for the executive to decide whether he wants to send it wholesale to the legislature and from there on to a referendum, or whether he wants to do something completely different. That is really outside of our mandate. Our mandate, like I said, is very specific under the CRC Act. And we do not provide legal advice, and I seek not to do that here either. I think it's important that citizens have been able to, or will shortly, be in a position to see the draft constitution that was submitted to His Excellency the President yesterday, and make a determination for themselves in terms of the way forward, or seek advice in terms of the way forward. But that's about the best I can say.
Another question, this time from Ibrahim Ba, iAfrica TV. How did the CRC take the final decision from opposing position papers from the public on each subject on the draft constitution?
Well, it depends on the subject matter, and in fact, it's only very, very few areas where we have deviated from public opinion. And what we have done, we based it on research, we based it on practical concerns or issues that needed to be addressed, and we've also taken into account the level of agreement or disagreement within amongst members of the public. So it's a question of making sure that these things are balanced. In one or two areas, we recognize the need for further study and further review, and that required a lot more time, which we did not have, and therefore could not deal with those subject matter. But we've provided the necessary framework and also encouraged the National Assembly to take those matters forward. But I think I should add that it's important that citizens and others read the report, because the report outlines a reason for every decision that we have taken, particularly in those key areas that were of concern to members of the public.
Another question coming from Yankuba Jallo, a reporter with the Forea newspaper. He is asking, you did your nationwide consultation in which majority of people want every person born in the Gambia to be a Gambian, irrespective of their parents' nationality. I would like to know the position of CRC on this.
Well, I think if you look at the proposed draft constitution that we published in November 2019, we provided a framework that would allow the National Assembly to grant citizenship to those that were born and are living in the country as of a specified date. It was 15 November, we extended that to the end of December 2019. And yes, the public opinion was overwhelmingly in support of automatic citizenship. But we had to look at a number of variables in this particular regard. And those have to do with the ability of the country to absorb automatic citizenship for everybody that comes into this country, or that for every child that is born in this country. There are implications for it. There are financial, there are social, there are different dimensions that needed to be looked into. We did not have that time to look into that, and if we were to do that, we certainly would have had to exceed our mandate in terms of the period. We would have gone much longer than today, and certainly much longer than May, when our term under the law would have expired. So we built in a framework to look at what is feasible. And in doing so, we made comparative studies in the region and within the continent itself, and recognized that the countries that have been able to do this were countries or are countries of means. We have to take our economic size into account. We have to take our diversity into account. There are so many factors that we needed to take into account. So quite clearly, we are not saying that citizenship is not available to those who are based in the Gambia here and are not nationals of this country. We've created a mechanism, and that mechanism has always been there for them to pursue the path to obtaining nationality. I think that will give the opportunity to the state to balance its resources against the numbers that it takes in order to ensure that whoever it takes in, it is in a position to provide all the necessaries of life that a state is obligated to do without compromising those necessaries as in relation to its citizens. So the framework is there. Those that were born here up to a particular period, we provide this as a recommendation, certainly in the report, for the National Assembly to take that forward after doing the study properly in order to grant them citizenship.
Thank you very much, Chair. A lot of questions are coming in, and it's all coming from journalists. The next one is from Yusuf Telo. He said he have 2 questions, so I will read the first question. Initially, the CRC promised to submit the new constitution in late December 2019 and has extended until March 2020. Some civil society advocates have raised concern that this has reduced the possibility of constitutional referendum taking place this year. Has the delay from the CRC made it more difficult to pass the constitutional referendum this year?
Well, that's Mr. Taylor's opinion. I'm not sure it's an opinion I will share. The fact of the matter is everything we've done within the ambit of the CRC Act. We have never extended, we have never gone beyond our mandate. The CRC Act gave us 18 months to deliver, but it also gave us an additional 6 months where we can continue with the process to conclusion. We have completed it well in advance of the mandate of the period that has been, obligated under the under the CRC Act. So, opinion is one thing, reality is another thing. But the fact of the matter is the CRC is in full compliance with its mandate under CRC Act.
Here's a follow-up question. Has the President's Office or the Attorney General provided any indication when the final constitution will be forwarded to the National Assembly for parliamentary approval?
Well, Yusuf will have to address that question either to President Barrow or to Honorable Attorney General Batambedo. No, that's not a matter for me to answer. And certainly there has not been any indication to me. And I don't think that is a matter for me or my CRC colleagues.
Okay. There is one from Adama, a journalist from the Fatu network. Mr. Chairman, your commission comes under criticism over the clause of secularism. Can you tell us how has this matter been handled by your commission?
I believe I've already addressed that in my statement. I've outlined the different sections that address this in order to ensure that religious diversity in this country and all faiths are given fair treatment, and nobody interferes with the manifestation or practice of any religion in this country. I think it's important that they refer to the statement, but also to the sections that are outlined in the statement, and better still to make reference to the report that addresses quite comprehensively how the CRC has addressed this issue. In terms of criticism, yes, we recognize that that is not the end of the criticism. It's going to go on, but the fact of the matter is we have a duty to perform, and we perform that to the best of our ability, and without any discrimination between our people, because that would be wrong to do. And we recognize the religious and ethnic diversity of this country, and the importance of ensuring that our people continue to live together in harmony and in unity. And that's what we have tried to emphasize in the draft constitution, irrespective of what somebody else may say to the contrary. But that's exactly what we have tried to build into the draft constitution.
Another question, and in total, how much of dollars was spent on the commission throughout the drafting process?
You mean throughout the engagement process, since the CRC was established? I made this yesterday during my presentation to the President. We have expended, as of 29th March 2020, a sum of a little over $116 million. I can't remember the exact figure, but it's less than 117. So it's $116 million and change.
Another question from the Standard newspaper. Will the issue of term limit affect Barrow's first term in office?
Again, I will encourage members of the public to review the draft constitution. We do have the fourth schedule in the draft constitution, which deals with transitional provisions and consequential amendments. And within that particular schedule, provision is made that the term of the incumbent president shall be counted towards the 10-year period, maximum period that is outlined in the draft constitution.
Yeah, I think it's a similar question. He said, does this draft constitution reset the clock and make Barrow's first term count as per the 2-term limit? I think they're similar questions. Another question from the foreign journalist. What about the concern raised by ward councillors who said they want to be paid monthly and not to receive allowances? Is in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, that issue had been raised with us, but we also made it very clear during our second round of public consultations that those are not matters that can be built into the Constitution. Those are administrative matters that should be sorted out at the local government level. And that is precisely our position. We will encourage that local government authorities review their systems and make that determination. And if you look at the draft constitution, we have enormously empowered the local government authorities, giving them autonomous financial independence as well as decision making. So really, and the reason for that, we want to see national development from the bottom going right to the top. And it is important that the local government authority take those things into account and make a determination as to what will make them more effective. If you're going to have ward councillors, how can you make them more effective? Would that request be part of that process? That's a judgment we think is best left to the local government authorities, working together with central government.
Another question. Thank you for your tremendous job. At this point, who has the powers to add or remove anything in the draft constitution? And secondly, does the public know if something is added or omitted?
Beginning with the second question, the draft constitution will be published shortly. And I think ultimately, if it finds its way, as we hope it will, to the National Assembly, people will be in a position to make that comparison, to make a determination as to whether it's the original text that's being referred or whether it is whether it has been amended. That's a matter for the public. Anybody can make that review and establish the actual position. Who has the power to amend the Constitution? Our hope, and the Honorable Attorney General has been very specific on this as well, is that the draft Constitution will be taken through its stages right up to a referendum. And our hope is that this will be done without any amendment. But if any amendment is expected to read, I think one thing I can say with certainty, it wouldn't be done by the CRC members, because our mandate, insofar as the draft is concerned, has terminated. So whatever happens thereafter is really out of our hands. But I have always said in the past, I am an optimist, and those who have put us in charge hopefully will respect the views expressed by the public and the positions that we have taken. It is always extremely difficult in a constitutional review process to try to satisfy every opinion, because that can never happen. It has never happened in any constitutional review process. So what we have done is to try to create a balancing act, whereby we review things in a very objective and comprehensive manner to see also what is in the best interest of the country. All other things, one has to recognize that it's not always what you want that must happen. If you were to ask me today whether I love everything in the draft constitution, I will say yes. But if I were given the opportunity to amend, yes, I will amend certain things. And that's in the nature of every individual's thinking. And you do that for every commissioner, for every individual. Yes, there will be people who would want certain things changed. But the fact of the matter is we must move on. And we must respect the fact that the law that was established to that was established to get this constitutional review process forward has been followed, and the public opinion has been taken into account. We've carried our comparative studies, we've done our research, and we've consulted with experts as well. And what we have come up with, which is in the draft constitution, in our view, represents informed positions, informed decisions. And our hope, and we can only express a hope here, is that those in power, those in authority that can move the process forward will do so with dispatch, obviously bearing in mind the existing circumstances we find ourselves in.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Another follow-up question reads, does the CRC anticipate any amendment to the Constitution by the President before submitting it to National Assembly for approval?
We do not anticipate anything, frankly speaking. I know this is a major concern, and I can see why the questions are coming from every angle. And it was certainly a question also we encountered during the public consultations. But what we've always made very clear, and a position I reiterate now, is that once we are done with the draft constitution, and we are already done with it, frankly speaking, there isn't anything we can do. The matter is outside out of our hands, and I think some of these questions are best followed up with the persons who have authority to take the draft constitution forward.
More questions, and this time we're going to give a chance to journalists, because this is a press conference for media houses. I can see a lot of citizens, we call them citizen journalists, they're also trying to ask the chairman some questions, but we give priority to journalists first. Then if there is time, chairman will be able to answer some of those questions. Another one coming from the Standard newspaper. Will the final draft affect politicians with criminal records? Will this include political prisoners like Mr. Dabo?
I'm not going to go into personalities because I don't know what the circumstances of any particular politician is. What we have done in the draft constitution is to outline qualifications and disqualifications. And these were the same qualifications and disqualifications that were published in the draft, that in the proposed draft constitution back in November 2019. So that's the most I can say, certainly. And those are qualifications and disqualifications that have been reviewed with the public during the second round of public consultations, and there was general support for those provisions.
Another question, Mr. Chairman. Are Gambians in the diaspora going to vote in elections? What is the draft saying about this?
Well, in terms of the exercise of the franchise, which is the right to vote, we make absolutely no distinction between Gambians at home and abroad. Every Gambian, wherever you may be, you have that constitutional right. And the other matter is in terms of how are they to be facilitated to participate in elections. We have provided a recommendation in our report to that effect, but also we are aware that under the Elections Act, that is a matter that is to be pursued in that particular regard. But we certainly expect that every Gambian's right to vote will be respected. In terms of the diaspora, what we have recommended, and this is what we have also obtained from participants during the first and second round of public consultation, is that the diaspora voting should be limited to presidential elections because there are cost issues involved. If you go to parliamentary elections and you have hundreds and hundreds of candidates, it becomes extremely costly. It becomes a logistical nightmare in terms of how to go about that process. But again, that is a matter that is left to statute. Statute can always develop on those matters. But we have made it very clear that every Gambian, whether you're here, whether you're abroad, you have that right to the franchise.
Thank you. Another question from Ibrahim Abba of iAfrica TV. Section 91F states that one is qualified to contest as president if he holds a minimum of an undergraduate degree. Does this affect the current president?
That section, which will no longer be 91, and the section numbers have changed, makes two references in that particular regard. He's only cited one. It's either you have a university education qualification with minimum of 5 years experience, or senior secondary school certificate with a minimum of, I think, 10 or 12 years, I can't recall, but it's in the draft constitution. And the reason we've taken that approach is because during the public consultations, the overwhelming number of participants were very emphatic on the need for experience. They said educational qualification alone is not enough, and they were right. Experience is important for that #1 job in this country. So it is important that we emphasize that issue, and that was the reason why we place those two provisions side by side. It's either one or the other.
Okay. Chairman, another question from a freelance journalist, Lamin Jahate. He's asking, in your previous press conference, you did mention that the CRC spent $1.6 million. He's asking, is it million or billion, the cost of the constitutional building? I think myself I can. He's asking whether it's in million or in billion.
Well, it certainly is not billion. we are nowhere close to that. So what I said was, as of 29th March, what was spent in relation to CRC's work was 116 million, not billion. $116 million and change.
Another question from Omar Ba, again. The president is expected to nullify the 1997 constitution before the new draft constitution goes to referendum. What happens if the new draft fails to pass the test?
Well, first of all, the president doesn't have power to nullify any constitution. What will happen is that the constitution ordinarily should be referred to a referendum pursuant to section 226 of the 1997 constitution. And if the constitution is not adopted at the national referendum, that means we remain with the 1997 constitution, pure and simple. So it's either we vote for the 2020 draft constitution, or we remain with the 1997 constitution.
Another one again. What is the role of the CRC in terms of implementation of the draft constitution? What will CRC do?
The CRC does not have any implementing powers with respect to the draft constitution. However, in the 4th schedule of the draft constitution, we have established a Constitution Implementation Commission and outlined its membership, and also made provision for a National Assembly Committee on the implementation to aid the work of that commission. And the hope there is that all implementation with respect to the draft constitution will be taken forward by that particular commission, not this commission. Remember, once this commission is dissolved, whenever that is, that's the end of it.
Thank you. I'm trying to check for more corrections. Another one coming from Musa is asking, is all Gambians consulted in the drafting of this national document? If yes, how do you conduct your consultations?
We have, I laugh because anyway, we have consulted very broadly, and we've outlined our consultation platforms, and I made this very clear in my statement as well. We've used different medium in terms of how we reach out to the Gambian public. We've had the face-to-face public consultations, we've had focus group consultations, we've had the external consultations, we've had online surveys, house-to-house surveys, we've invited written submissions. Like I said in my statement, I mean, looking at the expansive nature of our consultation process, I don't think any Gambian can fairly deny the fact that they have all been given good opportunity to participate in the constitution building process. And unless he has a different medium that he thought we left out, but I think it has been as comprehensive as we possibly could have got it.
There is no further question, but there are people who are watching online and they want to ask some question, if the chairman permit.
Just educate me a little. This is a press conference. How do you deal with that? I just want to be clear.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem doing that.
Yeah, we are giving priority to journalists, so if we are exhaustive in that aspect, we can take just 1-2 questions from.
No problem. You are my boss in this. Yes.
Another one from the Foroya guy. What about death penalty, voting of prisoners at mile to secularism and the right of the media? Are these captured in the final constitution?
I think I've answered some of those questions previously. In terms of the death penalty, we've indicated very clearly in our report that the death penalty is actually not prescribed in the Constitution. A reference is made to it in 1997 Constitution, but it is not it's not a prescription of the Constitution. It is contained, I believe, in 3 pieces of statutes: the Criminal Code, the Gambia Armed Forces Act, and the Anti-Terrorism legislation. So that is a matter that the National Assembly needs to deal with, because they may decide to amend it and remove those impositions or do otherwise. So we didn't see the need to address that in the draft constitution, but we certainly do have a provision on the right to life.
Thank you, Chairman. Another one here reads, what are the safeguards in the Constitution which will make the draft Constitution stand the test of time, meaning to withstand the future circumstances?
I will say every provision in the draft Constitution. I mean, every provision in the draft Constitution has a purpose, and depending on the context in which it is built and the chapter within which it appears, it is designed to ensure longevity in terms of the continued existence of the draft constitution. And like I said, every single provision in the draft constitution, in our considered view, is important, and that includes every comma, every full stop, and everything that you find in the draft constitution.
Thank you. Follow-up. What were the key challenges in the building of this new constitution?
Well, it's a good question. We fortunately didn't have that many. Our biggest challenge was time. We were constrained. The 18 months was really, really very, very tight to enable us to get this draft constitution out in a timely fashion. So it meant long hours, sometimes going right into the late into the night. So that was a big challenge. Financially, there was a small hiccup. I wouldn't call it a challenge. where the internal public consultation was delayed for a short period. But thereafter, we never had any issue in that particular regard. We also, could have dealt with some issues better on hindsight, but on the whole, I think we have comprehensively addressed all the issues that are relevant to constitutional development. The other challenge we had initially was we probably did not factor in the magnitude of this assignment, and thought we could do with just a skeletal staff of about 16 to 18. And we realized that was never going to work. And then we had to embark on a comprehensive process of mapping out key positions that will guide and assist the process of constitutional review and development. So in that particular regard, again, we bounced back and we made sure that everything was taken on board and the appropriate staff were recruited to speed up the process.
Thank you, Chairman. Another one from Amadou Jallo, a journalist with the Point newspaper. His question reads, you said in your statement that the only one regret you had is the non-use of the word secular in the Constitution. What concrete reason did you took to leave the word out?
When I made that statement, it needed to be taken into context, and I made that statement yesterday to the President, not here. And it was our regret that when the draft Constitution was published, that was the proposed draft Constitution was published in November, there was a lot of debate over the word secular, whether there should be secular or there should not be secular in the draft Constitution. And it ended up in very acrimonious exchanges, which we felt was regrettable. But that notwithstanding, as a country and as people, we need to move forward. And the reason why we've adopted the position that we have are quite clearly articulated in the report, and I've also addressed them in the statement. I'm not sure I need to repeat them. But the fact of the matter is we have put in provisions that we hope will allay fears, provisions that will ensure that every faith in this country is respected and treated fairly, and that those provisions are made and they are very clear in our view and are not subject to state interference.
Thank you. I think we will soon come to the end of the question and answer because of the time is not on our side, but we will at least have some 2 questions that the chairman will be able to answer. Another question from Momodo MS Bar, Foroya newspaper. Is the salary of the president and ministers stated in the Constitution?
No, and we could not do that. That's not a constitutional matter.
Yeah. A follow-up question. Is the Auditor General's appointment subjected to National Assembly approval? What was your final decision on the Speaker? Is it elective within the elected members, or what is the process what processes are put in place?
The Office of Auditor General is one of the independent offices under the Chapter on Independent Institutions, and all of those offices are subject to National Assembly confirmation. In terms of, what is the second question again?
No? The Speaker.
The Speaker. The provision remains the same, which is that the Speaker, it has to be somebody elected from outside of the National Assembly. But the Deputy Speaker or Deputy Speakers, as the case may be, has to come from within the National Assembly, meaning amongst the elected members.
I think that will be the final question.
If you have questions from private citizens, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, you will answer some. Okay. This one is asking about the mandate of the National Center for Civic Education, NCCE, in the draft Constitution.
No, that's a good question. I mean, if you look at the current Constitution, that's the 1997 Constitution, and compare it to what we have actually expanded the role of the National Council for Civic Education. The current constitution limits the mandate of the NCCE to constitutional law matters, in other matters of the constitution. But we've expanded that to go beyond that remit and to include statutes, other laws that the National Assembly passes in order to sensitize the public. And even where there are draft proposals for enactment, the National Council for Civic Education has a responsibility there. But also we have transformed the National Council for Civic Education into a commission and giving it that financial independence that it requires, because we think it's a very, very important institution in the overall governance architecture of this country, and they needed to be empowered, and we hope we have put in sufficient provisions to ensure that so that their expanded mandate can be effectively and efficiently carried out.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm trying to see if there is another question. Another question from Foroya newspaper, Yankuba Jallo. Local government authorities submitted that they want to control the extraction and harnessing of resources in their region. What is the draft saying about this? What is the draft saying about this?
Well, first of all, I think I will refer the questioner to the chapter on land matters, where we sought to address that issue. If you look at the principles that have been established under that particular chapter, one of them has to do with the equitable sharing of natural resources. I'm not sure about the controlling aspect of it, because that was not what we got from our public consultation. What people were asking for was to have a share of whatever was being extracted from their areas. And we put in a provision on equitable sharing and distribution of resources. But at the end of the day, we do need to recognize that whatever resource is found in this country becomes a national resource. It's just to ensure here that that the communities that are affected have some equitable benefit arising out of that.
Another one here, what is the draft constitution saying about the dual citizenship?
Well, that's an open-ended question. I don't know exactly what it means, but
he's asking about the provision on dual citizenship.
Yeah, there are different aspects of dual citizenship. That's why I say I don't understand which one. But let me just explain this briefly. Gambians, the citizens of the Gambia by birth. Now there is no difference between by birth or by descent. Once you are born of a Gambian parent, you are a citizen by birth. You can acquire citizenship of another country without losing your Gambian citizenship. If you are a foreign national living in the Gambia and has gone through a naturalization process, for instance, you do not lose the citizenship of your original country if there is a reciprocal arrangement, or if there is there is an arrangement whereby Gambians wishing to naturalize in that same country wouldn't have to lose their Gambian citizenship. So in that particular area, that's retained. However, where that reciprocity element is absent, they will have to give up their foreign nationality before they are given Gambian nationality. So those are the elements insofar as dual citizenship is concerned.
Thank you very much, Chair. I don't think there is any further questions from the viewers, and I thank you for responding to those questions at the best of your ability. Without much ado now, I will call on the Vice Chairperson, as usual, to give the vote of thanks. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, staff of CRC, good afternoon. It has been a long, tedious journey, and I believe it was a fulfilling one too, because we have delivered on our mandate. Throughout the journey, we had a wonderful partnership with the press and the general public. As we go our separate ways, we thank you for your valuable support and commend the draft Constitution to you. We encourage citizens of this country to receive the draft as their own. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Very short statement. You are very good at making short statements. Congratulations for that. Without much ado, on behalf of the Commission, I thank my colleagues, the journalists. These are people who have been with us since we started this review process. We say thank you for being with us. Thank you for the partnership, and then keep posted. We'll keep you posted on our various social media platform. What next for the CRC? And big congratulations to our honorable commissioners for job well done. You know, I don't think what they have done we will be able to do. They will be here late at night, all trying to make sure that we have a very progressive constitution, and we have finally delivered on our mandate. So big congratulations to all of you. Thank you so much, and have a great day. With your permission, Chairman.
Of Constitution and the report, including an explanatory memorandum, published to the public, and hopefully you will make sure that if it is not on the website, it gets onto it in the next few minutes.
Thank you very much. That's a very important information. The CRC final constitution is out on our social media platforms. You can visit our website, www.crc220.org. Also on Facebook, Constitutional Review Commission.
Of course, brings us to the end of the press conference by the Constitutional Review Commission, and of course eventually also giving Gambians the opportunity to lay hand on the final draft of the Constitution after finally it was formally handed over to the President yesterday. And today the Chairman there giving a very, very wide of course clarity on many issues that have been asked by the journalists, but also in his statement he have of course clarified some critical issues in his statement. Press, a long one though, but I think was something that Gambians was looking forward to. The Chairman has spoken on many issues. What has been your what has been the most interesting highlights that we had from the Chairman's?
Yeah, as you know, it was a press conference and journalists were all out to ask the critical question. And the fact that many people think that the draft is submitted to the cabinet where the president, his, cabinet ministers can look over it and then decide when to pass it to the National Assembly. So the fear is whether the executive will have to do something that, maybe do some adjustment behind the public view. But the launching of this report, or the release of the report itself, or the Constitution draft by the Commission, will make it very difficult now for anyone to do any side issue on the document. So meaning that it is now out for the public to read and then compare it with the previous draft, and even compare it with the 1997 Constitution to see whether the views and aspirations of the public is being captured. So this is a very important case where I think the Constitutional Review Commission has kind of cleared itself to say that what we gave to the president just yesterday is here for you, the public, also to help in vetting as to what will happen on the document before it is passed to the National Assembly. Well,
according to the Chairman, as he's explained, they do not expect the executive to maybe add or reduce anything from the Constitution, but that have nothing they can, of course there's nothing that they can do as far as their mandate has ended, as far as this work is concerned. But relatively they have explained almost all the pertinent issues, critical issues as far as the constitution is concerned. Now it's up to the Gambian people to also digest some of these issues at their own levels and see what should be the way forward. And generally he has also briefly explained what will happen here next. After the executive to the National Assembly before it will come back to the citizen again, maybe for consideration and possible adoption or otherwise.
Yeah, so that is very key in his statement, that they don't expect the president to do anything that contravenes the will of the people. Actually, the current president Barrow has time and over again, preached, transparency. He has pledged allegiance to the constitutions and promised that the mandate of the CRC is something he needs to support. So having such a draft constitution that is supposedly the view of the Gambians, I think he is in line to say that he don't expect anything. But now that the president also has his own party, so one can easily say that okay, he has some political interest where he is looking up to contest during the next election. So but now in terms of qualification, how would the president move on with this new constitution? Already the qualification, when it comes to academic qualification, you either have a first degree or a senior school. If it is about first degree, then you need to have additional 5 years experience.
Exactly.
With the senior school degree, I think it's 12 years experience, which I think
and that's why many questions in fact were asked in that line for clarity purpose.
Yeah, so this opened the gate for many people who are not able to go through the university education, but with just a senior school certificate, you can, in addition to your experience, people can always claim to have experience. Market women can come up, and then even the youths, they do activism. These are all experience. So this, I think, is a little bit easy for anyone who wants to be a president. But then it is only time that will prove whether one is a real candidate or not.
Well, there you go. It is, of course, another critical day as far as the country is concerned. It was a day at the moment Gambians were looking forward to, and a new draft constitution finally released to Gambians again to go through, and of course it has been handed over to the president, like we said. But then, press again, among the very critical points that has been discussed during this press conference is, of course, the issue of the presidency, as you have just mentioned, but term limit also is in the constitution. We also heard about the secularism issue, which has been a very, very big time talking point when the initial draft was released.
Actually, because the chairman made it very clear that what the CRC managed to do is to maintain the section 1 of all the previous constitution that stated that Gambia is a sovereign independent state and not secular. So we ask, how did they came up with such a decision after opposing position papers were fired to the commission to, get these issues solved? But the commission, the chairman made it very clear that, okay, the methodology they use, they have to subject it to research and then substantiate it and see the popularity of the claim, so much so that, if the document is out, it will represent at least the majority and maybe based on also tangible issues that the country
and again, if I get him right, he said every decision taken in their work to this draft constitution has been clearly explained in the report as well.
Yeah, there is an accompanying explanatory report which we are yet to go through because this document is just been delivered. But I'm sure for the coming days, as he said, there is a fourth schedule where reviews can still continue going. Maybe we'll capture issues like this. But also just on the youth aspect, I think the youths who were campaigning, at some point
is some concerns about the age limit.
The age is unfortunate for youth, because to become a president you have to attain 30 years. So meaning
that qualifies you, and
for you to qualify to become.
I always say that qualifies you.
Yeah, of course. If I was a politician, this is an easy ride for me. I'm looking young, but at least that age is something that you can just easily get. But the majority of the people we mingle with in the youth camping, so they are below 35. So you realize that, in fact, with grade 12 certificate, it's attainable at the age of 18. So now, for one to graduate, we'll have to wait about 12 years to be able to touch that big position. So immediately after grade 12, you have to wait 8 years experience, and then that will take you to about 12 years.
Can we understand the reason, perhaps the rationale behind such kind of a decision?
Yeah, the argument
because we are talking about the presidency
here. Yeah. The argument from the senior citizens will always be that, it's not only about knowledge, it's about experience, it's about wisdom. So if you relegate the elderly, that means the nation will crash. It's a young driver on this seat of a new vehicle. So the elderly will always, advocate that, let's try to get the experience, let's use the wisdom of the elders, and eventually get to the position. It is turn by turn. If you want to jump, then they are not in for that. But the youth will also argue that so far there is no upper limit. There must not be lower limit. Let the qualifications speak for themselves. That's the argument of the youth.
Interesting. And again, another thing maybe about the monetary aspect of things, the amount of money spent in the work, over $116 million so far. There were some concerns raised on that, but it has been, explained by the chairman.
Yeah, sure. And then within a space of 18
maybe
months.
A staggering amount of money. Now the question would be, so in case, the constitution or the draft constitution is not passed, how would this be to the country, not only to the commission?
Yeah, that
but
would be a serious loss. If this constitution has to be rejected, that already $1.16 million, which could have settled something, big for the country, is being spent, and the discussion has been there, plus the energy and the time that it took people, and the hopes that we are graduating, the country is graduating from a dictatorial setup to a democratic situation. So for one to just come and have this constitution rejected, I think the commission is feeling like that, okay, that should not be the expectation.
But then some wise words from the vice chair, that every Gambian sees this draft constitution as yours. Probably that might play a very, probably good way of making sure that people would welcome and appreciate the new constitution.
Yeah, exactly. The ownership will depend on the context, because if you look at disqualification of a president also, you look at, we focus in too much on the president because this is the primary position in any country.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it says that if you are convicted, for a period of more than 12 months, you are not eligible for the presidency. So this is something that is going to now concerns people who transform themselves, who we all people believe that have undergone unfortunate conviction, and now they are ready to transform. But with all that, the constitution is very clear, so it doesn't give options that if you are convicted and you are not to be a president. Secondly, also, if you hold a dual citizenship, you are a citizen or allegiance to another country by any form, so it means you cannot be a president for this country. So these are like seemingly new provisions that I think are very critical. So we discussed about the secularism, but the new thing that we notice in the constitutions also. So there is a provision that even though the country
is a sovereign state,
but
the president
has
has limited powers and
has no power to declare it a religious state. So and the National Assembly shall not pass a bill to declare one party state, or or a religious state. So there is also a borderline built around religious, which might have been a concern for the minority in this country.
And another thing I find very interesting probably is that the chairman have tried to explain the difference, as has been asked by one of the journalists, between the 1997 constitution and the current one. And he outlined some of fundamental issues which he thinks there are some main differences between the two. But again, it's not to say that they have completely rejected or taken all out the 1997 constitution. There are some of the provisions which they have maintained.
Yeah, some elements are maintained, especially the section 1. It's very easy to see the section 1. Usually when a constitution comes, you just go straight to the first section. So if it is interesting, you keep reading and then eventually get to the 100th section. So already, he made it clear that there are some sections which they felt that, have to be maintained from colonial time to date.
Yeah, exactly. If you are just joining us, we are just trying to digest somehow what's been just discussed at the press conference called by the Constitutional Review Commission, and of course finally handed over the new draft constitution to Gambians after submitting it to the president yesterday. So we can also, as citizens, have, of course, what the constitution or the draft constitution entails all about, and of course, no chance or opportunity though for people to give further suggestions or ideas or whatever you might have. That has been done, I think, in several occasions. Gambians have been given that opportunity home and abroad, and people have suggested and given their opinions to the commission, and they have worked on all those things and finally came up with a final draft that's been given to the president also. That's the executive to go through and maybe see if there's need to omit or include something from it, then that would happen. Or if not, they would entirely take the same draft given to them to the National Assembly for, of course, another process. What will happen, we cannot predict or tell you whether anything would happen, but time will tell. But then, press, I know we will soon got to leave, and coronavirus, again, we cannot just let it go. We are confronted with a situation that is very difficult to maybe to go through at this moment. The Constitution is a very fundamental document for any country. We are talking about election, but this is the guidance somehow to say the executive, the time that they would have to go through this, take it to the National Assembly, no sittings at the moment. How can we explain this? Is it possible to have a referendum before 2021? Should, in fact, this situation continue as it's happening right now? It's a difficult one, it seems.
It's a critical moment, but the CRC has done their part. That is, at least this draft was supposed to be delivered earlier on, but they were able to communicate as to the new dates, going along with the media. So what the CRC did was it managed to work with the media throughout the entire process. So now they have handed over the ball to the executive for work to be done. So it is up to the executive now to open up the gate to inform the public as to what activity is happening at the State House, what activity is happening within the corridors of power before it will be handed over to the, Parliament. So these are the three arms of government. So the judiciary will await the implementation and interpretation part of it. But for now, from the executive, that is the cabinet itself, where the constitution was, sent yesterday. Now the National Assembly will have to cross-check it because it is a law-making body. It has all the, science and of law-making and build production. So the National Assembly have to discuss it. Once it confirms it a fit document for the country to digest, then referendum dates are set. Who will set the date now? So this is what we await now. The chain is now go to the executive, from there to the National Assembly, and the media. It is a busy time for us to continue following in this wake of coronavirus, like you said now. So I don't know how much online press conferences and engagement will be possible. I
know, of course, there will be different reactions to this one, but there would have been more reactions if it was not the situation that we've found ourselves in with this coronavirus issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether people have time to talk about the Constitution in this moment, we have social distancing. Look at it now, even in the newsroom, the social distance and our cameramen are very far apart. When you come closer, everybody is running away from another. So the point is now, who will have that time? So is the infrastructure enough for the fourth schedule to be rigorously, for people to participate? Because once it is online now, very few people, of course, the media did well today by responding to the questions and answer sessions, and you can look at the number of questions, meaning that people are online, the infrastructure is set. I don't know how to the extent, but then now with the executive and then the National Assembly, hopefully also engage in the public back. So in these days of coronavirus, Gambia is talking about 4 cases. People are concerned about that. Even today there will be a press conference to update the country as to, what else is about coronavirus. So we just hope that everything will be well,
Yeah, we hope so, certainly. Anything else you needed to touch on before we finally go?
Exactly. So we are set to go and then continue following the Constitution where it is at the Executive and then National Assembly. From there, we continue coverage on coronavirus.
All right, we'll keep you updated and posted as far as the final draft has been published today, and I know it's been received by a lot of Gambians. Of course, the debate would continue, I know, but then again, we are confronted right now with what we call COVID-19 or the coronavirus, so that in some way would have some impact on how Gambians would have debated or discussed on the final draft that has been finally handed back to Gambians, and of course also to the executive, and that is the president. I have to be specific here, but we like the chairman said, work will certainly continue despite the situation, and he advised government in that case. So with that note, we thank you so very much as always for following Africa TV. We'll continue on other coverages, like press have said. Of course, coronavirus is the order of the day, so we would give you more updates on that any moment from now. As you know, on a daily basis, the ministry would update Gambians on the situation, like he said, and other important discussions would also follow next. But for now, thank you very much for the pleasure of your company. Bye-bye.
My fellow Gambian brothers and sisters, this is a message of precaution, solidarity and hope. We living in very unusual times. The coronavirus is a menace that's threatening all of us, but together, united, we can do something about this. First, we need to take necessary precautions and take expert advice and act accordingly. Stay away from crowded places, wash our hands and use hand sanitizers where necessary. Let us remain calm and hopeful. There is a God, that God is alive. Allah will take care of us, but we have to take the necessary precautions. There is a number that can be called to report and to ask questions. Let's use it. Together, we can fight this menace, and we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be there for us. Let's remain calm and hopeful. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Let's be patient, calm, take precautions.